According to Richard McAullay. Ken McAullay, ladies and gentlemen, and with him, Hall of Famer Gary Bygraves. Here they come. Now, boys, we've got 10 minutes, okay, Noddy? 10 minutes. Is that all right, or you want more?
I never listen to the coach when I play, and I'm not listening to the MC. I just think it's a very big pity. Welcome everybody and welcome to country. I just think it is a very big pity that Dick McAullay hasn't moved on. He did move on after a bit of whinging, but I must add a little bit to that because Brownie came to me before the 72 season and said, listen, we've got a refugee who can play, but he's lacking a bit of confidence, and would you be prepared to move to the half-back flank for a while to give him a run? And I said, look, I'm an ultimate team man, but I will do it only on one condition, and that is, Dick was only getting $4 for a loss and $20 for a win, but he didn't know I was on 250. A win, lose or draw. So what happened, I spent 4 years in grade 7 at Meriden, so I wasn't the smartest fella, but I did know that I had a bit of bargaining power because I said, I'm prepared to move to the half-back flank, even though I'm playing down the middle for WA, but I want another 100. And I got it.
Now, Noddy, we'll come back to you regarding that conversation you had with Brownie when you fronted him about your role in the team. Remember that? Just think about it. You'll have another time. Another great product from Dean Mill. Of course, John Todd, Paul Pios, of course, former East Perth captain, Sir Ross Hutchison, Gary, but you are at the top because I was there, as I said, a young boy, and Gary Cowboy Bygraves took the game by the scruff of the neck in that third term, kicked 3 goals against the win, and it was done and dusted. In the first 5 minutes it was too, Noddy. How many times does that come up in conversation?
Oh, a lot. Brought up a lot, particularly by me.
Now, you've been involved in all these women bridesmaid years. Do you remember the mood and what it was like on the morning of the grand final in 1972? Because I reckon all the East Perth players, supporters included, would have been packing shit, to put it mildly.
Well, I can only remember the game. I don't know how I felt before the game. After Mel Brown's pre-game talk individually to me, that's all I remember, and then the game. So I don't know how I felt during the game. It all depends on the weather. Because, you know, if it was a wet day, I think, oh, well, I'll kick 5 goals today because it's a wet day like at D Mill, because we played underwater down there. Or if it was a fine day, I think, oh, well, I'll kick 5 goals today because it's a fine day. But I was a little bit worried that I'd do what Brownie said and go to sleep for most of the game and then wake up with a few minutes to go. So I could kick a couple of goals, because Brownie used to say that I was the only player that he coached or remembers that would go to sleep for 100 minutes during the game and wake up for 20 minutes and kick a couple of goals and win the game for us. So
that's what you did. You played on the half-forward flank. Noddy played on the half-back flank. Give us a bit of a critique on what sort of player this bloke was.
Well, Noddy, I played in 1966 when I was 16. I was playing thirds with Noddy. And I was lucky enough to play with his brothers, Glenn and Neil, in the thirds and fourths. But in the league side, Noddy was a champion footballer, and he's a champion bloke too. Real good guy, but a champion footballer. When I kicked 3 goals in 3 minutes in the third quarter against the Breeze, Noddy claimed that it was from his running game from the half-back flank that gave me the 3 goals. But I'll credit him to 1. I reckon he gave me one. The other one was from a David Whittle knock when David was in the ruck, and the other one was from Mel Brown when he took a mark and the Claremont bloke knocked the ball out of his hands, and me being a goal-hungry little bugger, grabbed the ball and went goalwards, and John Furman, the umpire, said play on, and I kicked the goal. So Noddy, Brownie and Dave Whittle, I give credit for those 3 goals.
So Noddy, when you look back on that day, 1972, and you'd had phenomenal 72. Of course, you opened the batting for Western Australia, made a fair amount of runs, and they won the Sheffield Shield that year in 1972. So Noddy won a waffle premiership in the Sheffield Shield in 1972 as a making back. So you probably thought, how good sport?
I did, but quite honestly, I'm not here to talk about myself. No, I mean that. I want to talk about the teammates and the coach, if it's all right with you. Brownie and I did have our differences, and I was horribly misunderstood, if I can just say that about myself. But all of us players in that team seriously do owe Malcolm Gregory Brown. He was the person responsible, because he was a very, very good coach. He had some problems placing players in the right position, but that aside, Brownie, not only in 72, but in 72, he had a magnificent season as a player as well. And to think that back in the 72 Carnival, Kevin most probably can't remember this because it was a long time ago, but Brownie was the first West Australian to ever be named All-Australian coach. All-Australian captain. He most probably has written coach against it as well in the picture. But his season as a player in 72 was better than his 69 season. And he should have won the Sandover medal because he got ones in every game. He apparently encouraged the umpires a bit too much. But in the last game of the season that year, he was easily the best man on the ground, clearly, and he never got a vote. And he lost the Sandover by 1. But his coaching was absolutely superb. And we'd all played in many losing ones, and he was the single person responsible for us to enjoy something that we hadn't enjoyed for a long while. So, great stuff, Brownie.
Noddy, did Brownie give you your nickname of Noddy? There is a story behind that, isn't there?
There is. I was 17. I just came down to Perth. I was blinded by the lights because I came from the country. And when I got to East Perth, I was very fortunate that Mel saw that there was this skinny little kid that had low self-esteem. He needed to come out of his shell, so I reckon it was within 10 minutes he saw me nodding at him or anyone that talked to me, and immediately it was Noddy. But what he didn't realise was it was a great technique that I'd picked up during those years in grade 7, because when you nod at somebody and grin, they think you're listening and you're not. They think you're agreeing and you're not. And most importantly, you don't get engaged in the conversation because you lose time and you can't get it back. So Brownie was responsible, but Brownie also, can I just say one slightly negative, Brownie was a control freak. And during 72, we're getting Judy, who's here. Judy's made a comeback to football functions after being away for 30 years because she got tired of listening to the same stories. But I went up to Brownie in the lead up to the grand final in 72, and I thought I'd better tell him something. And I said, Mel, I want to see you after training. Shit, what's he going to say? I said, Mel, I just want you to know that Judy and I on Wednesday after the grand final are going to get married. Now this control freak said to me immediately, "Noddy, you can't marry Judy." And I thought, what the hell is this bloke talking about? I said, why? He said, you can't love two people at once. now, quite honestly, Judy and I, on October the 4th, it's our 50th. So even though he got everything right, during 72, he still got one wrong.
Not a great story. Now, Bygraves, can I just ask you a couple of questions finally? If I recall, watching you between, I think, 68 and 76, you played at East Perth, correct? I reckon most of your goals you kicked with a torpedo punt, the Torbies. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes. Hook shots, a lot of hook shots.
What, the way they do these days? I know the snaps in the pockets or that, but you would be 50 metres out and you basically do the Torbie, correct?
Yes, because I used to say that I come from Dean Mill and it rains for 6 months of the year and drips off the trees for the other 6 months. And even when I was playing under 15, C grade, B grade and A grade virtually on the same day, and then boundary umpiring sometimes, I'd run barefoot in the water and you're about that far underwater down at Dean Mill. And but the question?
I do the torpedo punt. How do you master the torpedo punt?
Well, the torpedo punt, because it was too wet to kick drop kicks, so you kick torpedoes. The drop punt hadn't been invented yet back in the early, so kick torpedoes. And I remember coming to East Perth in 1966 and I was training at Perth Oval and we were doing end-to-end work, about 20 metres apart. And blokes were kicking drop kicks to each other, hitting them on the chest. And I was kicking torpedoes from 20 yards off, and which wouldn't have been too bloody good to look at. And Brian McGregor, the fullback for East Perth in the league side, come up to me and said, "Bygraves, what the hell are you doing? Why don't you kick a drop kick?" I said, "Well, D Mill, it's too wet to kick drop kicks, Macca." So I kicked torpedoes. He said, "Well, come with me and I'll teach you how to kick a drop kick." And he virtually taught me how to kick a drop kick, and instead of torpedoes end-to-end work now, I kick drop kicks.
There you go. And finally, we've got to ask you the question. How many people know how Gary Bygraves got his nickname of Cowboy? Do we all know? Well, there you go. At the 50th anniversary of the 1972 Premiership, how did you get the nickname Cowboy?
I was playing thirds against Claremont in 1967, maybe 1966. And I was playing on a wing and it was in front of the grandstand at Perth Oval. And the Claremont footballer had the ball and I was chasing after him and another Claremont bloke come across the shepherd and I was going flat out and I thought, well, I'm not going to go through him or around him, I'll go over the top of him. So I jumped in the air and I straddled him, had both my legs around his neck and rode him like a wild bull for about 20 metres and I nosedived him into the dirt and I was up like this and Neil Bailey, our thirds, our force captain, yelled out, "Ride 'em Cowboy." And I turned up to training the next day and it was Cowboy this and Cowboy that and I thought, well, I used to play Cowboys and Indians a lot at Dean Mill, so it was appropriate.
Very good. There you go. There's the mill. Finally, Noddy, you've had a lot of sporting successes, you know, in cricket and footy, Tassie medals, Simpson medals, Premiership, Sheffield Shields, all this sort of stuff. Where does this group of players in 1972 rate as far as you're concerned?
There's no doubt that the Premiership team and the Sheffield Shield teams, they are all the same, and the makeup of the people are exactly the same, you know, very supportive, want to win fairly, So I just think it's fantastic to have a pulse still, to be able to come to these functions. But I do have something in my hand if I can, and I'll make this quick because we've got to go to a commercial. For 50 years, there's been another whinger at the East Perth Football Club. The bloke who was the best player on the ground, Dutchy Verstegen, he was the best. We had a great team effort, so everybody played their role. But Dutchy always claimed that the Simpson medal I got awarded was his. And I have rung Dr. Simpson from upstairs, and after 50 years, Dutchy, and I got 2 that year, so you can have this one. Dutchy is going to be awarded rightfully the Simpson medal in 1972. The funny thing about it is that when you looked at the voting sheet for the 72 Simpson medal, it said McAullay 6, Brown 5, Moss 4, someone else, Gillespie. Not one vote for Dutchy. Now, coming from that, I had to actually say to Dutchy, the Simpson medal is for the fairest and best. But Dutchy, a great player, and I'd like to, on behalf of Dr. Simpson, who couldn't be here, present you with the Simpson medal, mate, for the 72 grand final.
And first of all, ladies and gentlemen, another very, very synonymous name with the East Perth Footy Club. Good on you, mate. Great to see you. Thank Ken McAullay and Gary Bygraves as well for joining us. We're going to move on. Thanks, Noddy. Thanks, Cowboy. Thanks for joining us.